Welcome to the August 26, 2019 meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission. If you would stand with us, please, for our prayer and our pledge. Bow your heads. Our Father in heaven, Lord, we're so thankful for this day. We're thankful for the abundant life that we have the opportunity to share, especially here in this community. We do pray for this community, we pray for our county, and we pray for our state. And we ask that you continue to bless the state of Tennessee. God, we ask that you be with our nation and the leaders of our nation. There needs to be healing, and we pray for that healing. Father, be with this commission as we conduct the business of the county, and may that business be in the best interest of all of our citizens. We also pray that you be with our staff every day as they deal with issues, and be with them that they can make the right decisions too. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Amen. Would you face the flag, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Call the roll, please, Gail.
Charlotte P. Chip Pinion.
Here.
Craig Lynch.
Yeah.
David Jones.
Here.
Jim Averwater.
Here.
Lee Bogle.
Here.
Mike Cush.
Present.
Mike Vaught. Pettis Reed.
Here.
Rhonda Allen. Jeff Phillips.
Present.
I have a quorum.
Thank you, Gail. This time we need to read and approve the minutes of our July 22nd meeting. I'll call on our Vice Chair, Mike Cush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those minutes do appear in order, so I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the July 22nd meeting minutes. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have one item that has been withdrawn, and that's 6C, item submitted for final plat approval, 19-2051 Joywood Presbyterian. That item has been withdrawn. Under new business, 6A waiver request, 6A1 19-4002. Clarence Thompson is requesting a waiver allowing 2 lots measuring less than 5 acres to be accessed via a 50-foot private easement for a property located along Gum Puckett Road. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and good morning, Commission members. Hope everybody's doing well this morning. Before I get into the agenda items, I did want to make just a quick announcement. We had received some correspondence regarding the use of the microphones. Apparently with the recording, sometimes, I don't think it's so much an issue here as it is maybe in the courtroom, but just make sure that when you're talking into the microphone, because we can hear fine in this room especially, but sometimes the audio feed isn't picking up. So if you could just make a mental note to yourself to be doing that, we'd appreciate it. So with that, we'll go ahead and get into the agenda items we have today. This first item is a waiver request by Mr. Clarence Thompson. These properties that you're looking at, and they're on your screen, you'll see along Gum Puckett Road. They're reflected on a plat that was recorded back in August of 2013. The applicant would like to take a portion of 2 of these lots, and you can see that on the display in front of you, that area kind of marked in green. He would like to take a portion of that lot and a portion of that remaining 5.01 acres to the south, and what he would like to do is make a new lot out of that for one of his family members, which would be accessed off of the existing easement for access that is there. The issue that will create, the big one, is the fact that the lots, 2 of them, will be under 5 acres at that point. Right now you've got the 1 lot, and then you have the 5-acre tract in the back, which that's the way that's currently set up is legally conforming, because the lot has, the one on the road has road frontage, and then one in the back is accessed by a 50-foot access easement that's 5 acres in size. But if he were to do this particular division the way he would like to, that's going to create a situation where there's 2 lots actually, that are accessed off of this easement that are not 5 acres in size. So he also knows that it's possible he might have to get a fire hydrant waiver. Right now, he hasn't had survey work done. He's just looking to see if this is something that's even feasible to do, and this is how we counseled him to move forward with this. So with that, the applicant is present, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
We have done this before.
I mean, we've done similar things in the past, yes, sir. We don't see as many requests for this, but this wouldn't be the first time that we've looked at something and approved something like this.
Is the applicant here and available?
He is, yes, sir.
Would you please come forward?
To the podium.
If you would come up to the podium, speak into the microphone.
Good morning.
Give us your name and
Clarence.
tell us what you have in mind, what you want to do.
Okay, Clarence Thompson. And up there where they got it marked off, the part down towards Gunpucket Road is property where they will probably have a perk site. The one up, well, which is on the upper part of the map over here. When I had the soil site done for the house back at the back, the soil scientist was out there. He just looked at that square right there and said that probably wouldn't perk. So I feel like if I can put the house on there and then get enough land on the other lot for a perk site. And that's the reason I got it split up on two pieces of property to get one lot out of it.
Your intent is to
Build my daughter a house.
Okay. You live on this property?
Yes, I live at 7420, which is 5 acres now.
Okay.
And I also own the house at 7400, and my wife has got 7442. And we're both getting old, and we want to try to get one of our kids there close to us. That's my purpose of it.
Any questions for Mr. Thompson?
Make a motion, we approve it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve 19-4002 for Clarence Thompson. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B, items submitted for preliminary plan approval. 6B1, 19-1009, Walnut Grove Farms. This is revisions now. 1 revised lot and 2 additional located on 1.88 acres zoned RM located off Walnut Farms Boulevard. Walnut Grove Farms is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The preliminary plan for this development was originally approved by the Planning Commission back in July of 2016. The applicant is proposing to revise the existing Lot 71 by dividing it into a total of 3 lots, which would be 1 revision and 2 additional lots, lots 73 and 74. Mike is zooming in the area right through there. The applicant was in the process of confirming with CUD that adequate soils are available for the step system to accommodate the extra lots. We have received verification from CUD that the soil is available, provided that the applicant works with CUD as far as I believe there was some sort of a well found and how they handle that. Jason Laxon is here and can answer more detailed questions, but as long as everybody's kind of talking to each other and everything's coordinated, they should have enough soil to make that work. So that was really the outstanding comment that we had on this. The rest of staff's comments have been addressed, so we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time. Jason, was that pretty much accurate? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve, subject to any staff comments.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve 19-1009 for Walnut Grove Farms. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6C, submitted for final plat approval, 19-2051. I'm sorry, that's the one that's been withdrawn. 6C2, 19-2056, Ruth Estates, 6 lots on 12.87 acres on RM, located off Alfred and Leanna Road, Joe Thomas Alford and James Alford and Shirley Alford Herman are the applicants. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. The applicant's proposing to subdivide this tract into 6 parcels, all of which are at least 2 acres in size. This is actually kind of the second rendition of this that we saw as staff. When they originally brought this in, they had about, if I remember, like 11 or 12 lots on it. They're looking to do like a possible alley-loaded type product. After looking at it, though, and realizing that they would have to do more on the stormwater side of things if they had more lots, they decided to go with the alignment that you see before you today. Our comments have been addressed. This plat is in good order, so we'd recommend approval.
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve 19-2056 for Ruth Estates.
I have a question. What, lot 1 and 2, what are the access points to these?
Alford Road to the south. Leanna Road. Or Leanna for
Alfred.
lot
Okay, so
2.
these would come off Alfred Road?
Alford.
Alford
yeah.
Road, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
What's note 11 say?
What's that?
What's note 11?
One driveway? Or,
That's the stamp.
Minimum
Never mind,
pad.
yeah, okay.
Elevations. No, they could each have a driveway.
Mhm.
There's frontage along Alford at the south, and then along Leanna
These are long,
on the east side.
long drive.
Right, and they've got, I mean, both on Alford Road, both lots have about over 200 foot of frontage. So, I mean, there's no reason that we would see to have to share drives on that point. And they're consistent in size, as you can see with Lot 1 right to the west, and then the Joe T. Alford property right to the west of that. So they're looking at roughly the same size lots.
it would be nice if those in the back would share a driveway though, instead of having 3.
Well,
Have one.
we suggested that. They said each one would have their own driveway, which we suggested do a cross-access easement among those 3 lots, so they
Right.
could all share one driveway.
Does that matter?
Any other questions? Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6C3, 19-2057, Lufkin subdivision, 6 lots on 8.15 acres, zoned RM, located off Browns Mill Road. Larry and Walter Lufkin are the applicants. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. The applicant is proposing to subdivide this tract also into 6 parcels, even though we're not talking, these are different applicants, but all of these are going to exceed an acre in size. Our comments have been addressed on this. Again, the plat's in good order. We'd recommend approval.
Distance issues on this one? Not so much. There is a little bit of a ponding area that we're going to have to ask them to add pad elevations on lot 5.
I think they did, didn't
Yes, they have done that. And most likely, we could tell them to put a driveway on this flatter section of Browns Mill instead of this curve, which would probably be in order anyway because the building setback area is on this side too as well. So.
Individual driveways on this one as well.
Individual, yes, sir.
Yes.
And the existing house would remain on lot 6.
And you can, if you look at that plat, you can see their septic right now. Their septic drain lines goes on the lot, what would be lot 5 if this is ever recorded. But you see that note kind of toward the top of the page there. They're going to remove those existing lines and install a new system consistent with TDEC. So that there's no need for any kind of a off-site easement or anything for this.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve with staff comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I revise and make it official? I like Mike's idea of holding that driveway as far to that property line to the right. I'm assuming that's to the east as possible. If they were to put that in that curve, that could be potentially dangerous.
Right.
I
We could
do-
have
I
them
do
show
like
a
that.
driveway location.
You can't have.
We've done that before.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to amend that to make that official if necessary, or just make it subject to?
David, is that okay in your motion?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Jim, is that a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve 19-2057 for Lufkin subdivision with some additional staff comments. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6D, item submitted for site plan approval. 6D1, 19-3043, AT&T Tower, Bradyville Connector, installation of a 190-foot monopole telecommunications tower with a 4-foot lightning rod on 33.68 acres property, 3,600 square feet of leased area, zone RL, located along Bradyville Pike. New Cellular Wireless is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. The Board of Zoning Appeals approved a special exception for this wireless tower on this property at their July 10th, 2019 meeting, just about a month and a half ago. This site plan does conform to the request made to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Our comments have all been addressed. Most of them are, I would call, more housekeeping in nature, just tweaking a few things. But the plan is in good order, and we would recommend approval. There are representatives of the applicant present if you would have any questions specifically for them.
And speaking of site distance, they are proposing to improve the site distance coming out of the drive, the slope on the, I guess as you're coming out, it'd be on the east side, and then also some improvements, clearing trees on the west side. There's a little bit of a curve right here, vertical and horizontal, but they're going to take this hill back a little bit to improve the visibility coming out of there. But they're going to improve the existing driveway with a new entrance ramp, and then use the existing driveway up to the top of the hill for the tower. You see, it's a significant hill.
Anyone have questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve with staff comments.
Thank you, Dave. I have a motion and a second to approve 19-3043 for AT&T Tower. Any other questions? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6D2, 19-3045, South Haven Amenity Center, construction of 1,890 square foot pool house, pool, associated parking, playground area, and mail kiosk on 1.18 acre site, zone PUD, located off Desmond Avenue. South Haven Development Group is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. The subject property will be used for an amenity center for the South Haven development, along with the pool house and pool and some playground facilities. You also see toward the right of the plan, you can also see this will be an area for centralized mail delivery. A good chunk of this subdivision already has curbside delivery, but this will take care of those areas that were not approved for that have to have the centralized mail delivery. We did have several comments on this site plan. Pretty much all those comments have been addressed. This site plan is in good order. The biggest concerns we had originally, this was shifted a little bit closer to the creek on their first submittal, and which was causing some issues as far as being in the floodplain and stream buffers and things. So they've shifted it all over to the west, and a lot of those problems went away. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Looks like fun.
Make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve 19-3045 South Haven Amenity Center. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6D3, 19-3046, Believers Faith Fellowship, construction of 12,000 square foot community assembly building and associated parking, zoned RM, located off Church Street and Highway 269. Believers Faith Fellowship is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. The Board of Zoning Appeals approved a special exception request for a medium community assembly use at their August 14th, 2019 meeting. This site plan is consistent with the approved request. We had a number of comments on this plan, not so much because it was a bad set of plans. It really is more because there was so much detail on there and a lot of information that there was just more to comment on. So the plans in and of themselves were actually a very decent set of plans. But we've worked with the applicant's design engineer, who is present, and the applicant himself, a member of the church, is present as well. But pretty much all of our comments have been addressed. I know there were several on the drainage and grading side. I'll let Mike get into those, but I think those are in pretty good order now as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike just for any comments he might have.
The main comment was that the design engineer had never been to Miller's Grocery, and I told him I wouldn't review his plan until he ate there, and he did. He said he ate there. So, yeah, this is not far from Miller's Grocery, in between Church and Christiana, and they have an existing church down the road with parking lot, and they're proposing to build a sidewalk down Church Street to the new facility, so they'll be able to use the existing, and I'll show you on the plan, continue to use some of the existing parking. It's up here on the west of the proposed site. This is the sidewalk location. We've worked with Greg Brooks of the Highway Department about what we want to see on the sidewalk installation. We're going to have handicap ramps and driveway ramps. There's an existing house, a rental house, between the church's parking lot and the new facilities that they'll have to add a driveway ramp for. But we believe we've addressed all the comments, and it is a good set of plans, good looking set of plans.
Is there a plan for the older building, the old building?
That, don't know. I assume they're going to continue to use it. The existing sanctuary, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
We are still.
Would you please come up and tell us your name and.
Right, my name is Wayne Scales. I'm a deacon there and a trustee chairman. We do have plans for the existing building. We are continue to use offices and periodical use for the existing sanctuary, but yes, the building will still be in use.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
This is probably a better plan. This is the old Christiana High School.
That's correct.
And you got a better plan there than when I was there. It was a smoke shack down there that we used to go to.
No smoking.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve 19-3046 for Believers Faith Fellowship.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the engineer, or I guess our head chief planner. So the parking lot, existing parking lot, I'm assuming is required in order to meet the square footage requirements of this church. Is there anything that prevents that parking lot from being sold at a later date and then falling under the parking requirements?
Actually, when you look at the plan, I think they actually have enough on site to handle what they would be required to have. So this is just giving them the opportunity for overflow parking should they need it. But to answer your, is there anything that would prevent them from selling that other lot for parking in the future, or if to somebody else for a different use in the future? There's not, but it wouldn't be required for what they're proposing to build on there anyway. It's just extra parking.
And they need 57, and they're providing 130 on site, plus the 62 on the existing parking lot. So they've got plenty, yeah. But you can see they're busting at the seams right now.
Well, I hope you fill every parking spot.
Yes, it's a good problem to have. It really is. So,
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. this is basically a safety question. In a situation like this, now that you have an entity with two facilities that are on opposite sides of a main thoroughfare, are they required then to put some kind of a safety crosswalk across Church Street with any flashing lights, or how do you protect the congregation?
Now,
From-
this is Church Street downtown.
Well,
Christiana.
I know, but they may get hit by a tractor or something. I don't know, but
Well,
I mean,
Tractors and a bicycle.
if you look at your screen,
Yeah.
they're very proactive. They have people directing traffic in the yellow vests.
okay,
So I was pleasantly surprised to see that. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and they have cones out here crossing the street. So I mean, we could work with the highway department about striping a pedestrian crosswalk.
okay. I was just curious as to how do we protect those folks, since they literally have to cross a. That's obviously not what would that be classified as? That's not even an arterial.
Probably, I'd say a collector at most,
Okay.
or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like Charlotte said. I mean, you're talking local traffic for the most part.
Sunday's the big
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
down there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Other questions? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. I think we have under other business or old business, our Vice Chair Mike Cush has been working real hard on a project, and Mike, let me turn the floor over to you, and you kind of
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the commissioners, they're aware of this. For those non-commissioners that are on the planning commission and may have read in the paper, there's a select committee regarding infrastructure funding that's being undertaken. The way the resolution reads, that if you are interested in becoming a member of that, the way it's written in the resolution, there will be 2 members from planning. If you have any desire to be on that temporary committee, please submit your request to Chairman Phillips, and at our next meeting, he'll go through those applicants, and we'll select those with probably the most infrastructure experience out of that group. And anybody can really be on the committee in terms of our roundtable discussion. So if 2 or 3 of you really want to be on it, and the resolution says we can only have 1, that's okay. We'll still take you, but officially we can only have 2 from the public work or from planning. So send your applications into Jeff, or just let him know that you'd like to be on it, and he'll put you on a list. Thank you.
if you would, forward those things to Doug, and then Doug can get them to me.
And Doug, could I have you send out an email to the group, since we have 2 or 3 that are absent today?
Absolutely. Mike, very briefly, the select committee, the ad hoc committee that's being put together, what is it? What's its a goal?
The goal, Mr. Chairman, is to by the end of the year to research, review, turn over rocks, define some different ways to perhaps fund road funding, drainage funding, without putting those costs on the burden of the taxpayer by a tax increase. As we all know, we are hamstrung by the Powers Act, and we cannot increase development tax without changing the Powers Act. So this group would just be looking at alternative solutions that we would pitch to the full commission for review.
Thank you, Mike.
Mhm.
Any questions on that for Mike? This committee's got a lot of work to do, and I would encourage you to try to get involved in that if you have a desire to do that. And and have the time to do that. Thank you.
When do you plan on having your first meeting, Monty?
Well, probably towards the end of September. There's a small handful of us that have got some good ideas already kind of kicking. And I've reached out to some other counties that are doing some very innovative things. And so I'm a kind of ahead of the game. I'm not starting just from ground zero, because we do have a deadline by the end of the year, so perhaps we'll be in time to send some ideas up to Nashville for their January 8th meeting, and perhaps they will listen. So I'll let you know once we have a committee established. I'll let you know, but I hope that to be towards the end of September. And I anticipate maybe only, 3 or 4 meetings, and then just a bunch of assignments to do some research and homework and in between meetings.
Thank you, Mike. Doug?
Yes, sir. I have a couple of items for your consideration under other business. The first thing that we wanted to discuss with you was in regards to the Old Mill Landing plan development that was deferred from the Planning Commission meeting 2 weeks ago. You'll recall that there were several comments and questions about the development and some concerns that were raised during the meeting. And those comments were discussed with the applicant's design team, amongst ourselves, with them. And what you have before you on your screen is kind of this is the direction that the applicant would like to go in. You'll remember that there was some concern along the extension of Rucker Road, about that being kind of a straight shot and the possibility of maybe excessive speed on that road. There was some talk about doing maybe some sort of a roundabout or something like that. You can see that they have done that right there. They've also made the lots along that section of the road larger. You can see those right through there. There's in the chart on the very left side. It's hard in the upper left. It might be a little difficult to see, but thanks, Mike. You can see that those minimums along that road would be a little over 9,000 square feet. And they kind of did a step down approach as you look at it. The ones behind that are a little bit smaller than that, minimum 7,150 square feet, and then the ones in the lighter tan, if you will, show a minimum of 5,850 square feet. They've also beefed up the open space, kind of different areas, and you can see that they've done those concentric circles that they have there. Those are 5-minute walk radius, is what you're looking at there. So that was just of the proposals that they put together. The applicant was wanting to kind of get your take on the changes they're making, if you like what they've done, if you had anything else that you might want to discuss with them. They are here. I don't know if they wanted to make a formal presentation regarding all this. I may have just said everything they wanted to say. But with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Chairman, and if you'd like to have the applicant come forward to speak, that'd be perfectly fine.
Looks like the applicant is coming forward, so.
Really just to answer questions. Doug went over everything that I would have stated. We tried to, with the 5-minute circles, really to show how condensed the neighborhood is. The night of the public hearing, there was a couple of references to a larger development in Laverne, and just wanted to show this is nowhere near that scale or size. All of our lots here are well within a 5-minute walking distance to at least one of the amenities, whether that be the pool clubhouse or the walking trail down to the river or to a playground. So did want to point those out, and if you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. We would like some feedback with the changes, just to see if we went in the right direction. We know you can't make an action today, but just more of a conversation.
There are sidewalks as well, and the width of the road a school bus can get by if someone's parked on both sides.
So these are as far as the width of the road, they're the normal width of all of our subdivision roads. So whether that, I think those are 24 foot of pavement, if I remember, 22 or 24. And so what we've looked at is increasing the front setback. That's one thing Doug didn't mention, or that I'd forgot, was increasing that front setback. Right now, we're proposed a 35-foot front setback. Push that an additional 5 feet to 40, so you can fully get all those cars outside the roadway. I can't say, and we will write in our HOA that you can't park in the street as well. And so let the HOA try to enforce that. So I'm sure there will be exceptions, but hopefully both of those items will minimize that, especially with Rucker being a collector street. Hopefully they'll try to stay off that.
And sidewalk?
There'll be sidewalks along both sides of all of our streets here. The one exception to that is kind of the sidewalk or the road that this piece of roadway right here. Here we've, instead of having them run along the road, since we've got so much green space and there's some pretty nice trees through there, we want to take those and run those outside of the right-of-way and try to take advantage of those trees rather than having two sidewalks down the street and a trail outside. It seemed to make more sense to just let it meander between those trees. It would become the responsibility of the HOA to maintain and create a little nicer pedestrian feel through there, I think.
Or for where teenagers get in trouble.
Well, they're probably going to do that anyway, so...
on this plan, how many lots was eliminated from the original?
So I think we wound up with basically the exact same yield. And so we... I think it was 431. I think the original request was maybe 432, 434. So we're within a couple. We lost a few throughout, but not many.
Okay.
Would you go back to the plan view, Doug or Mike? Matt, it seems like there was some discussion about perhaps on as you're looking at it, the far left side where Rucker Road and Elam kind of come together.
Yes, sir.
That those units that would be in kind of the light yellow, that the backs of those be something, I'm trying to remember what the conversation was, to dress the backs of those up that are along Rucker Road, so either by a buffer or a tree line, so you just wouldn't see the giant, 12 to 16 houses of vinyl on the backside, I think is kind of what Rhonda and my concern was.
All right. We can certainly add that. We'd probably add that for our residents anyway, just from the nature of that road. So we'll get that outlined on our plan better.
I know how this comment's going to sound, and let me apologize it right off the bat, but there was a lot of talk, maybe even a lot of thoughts running around in especially this commissioner's mind about starter homes and the size of the lots and the great number of starter homes in this one development. This planning commissioner had rather see a mixture. Some starter homes, but the rest of them not starter homes. If we're going to continue to do starter homes, I'd rather see them mixed in with a more standard type of development rather than all being pushed into one development. This bothers me, always will. I'm not saying that it's not something that the community needs, but what my concern is not next year, but 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years down the road, what this could become. And the number of homeowners that might be living there versus the number of renters that will come in there as time goes by. I'd a whole lot rather see some of these rather than all of these. So That's my comment. I'd rather see a better plan long-term for this community than this one particular development, all starter homes. So just my take on things.
I understand what you're saying, and I think that's what we've tried to address by doing kind of building in concentric rings, if you will, there by increasing the size. So I think that with the different lot sizes, we would see different price points and different home sizes. That's typically what we've seen with a house size or a lot size as it graduates up or down, that those home sizes go up with it or down with it. And what we're envisioning is a home price on the lower side of starting in the 220 225 range, and then some of these going up to the 275 to 300 range. So we say starter home, but that's taken on a different connotation than it did 10 years ago, and so it's a different level of buyer that has to qualify for that now as well. And we will see a mixture. I think those are some of our most successful neighborhoods are the ones that have a mixture. I'm not going to say that you're going to have a 4,000 square foot home in here, but you would have a mixture. You won't have, they won't come in here and build every one of them as the minimum square footage that we've stated in the book. So that's obviously just a minimum. So
can I look at this plan and determine that?
As far as what the price range would be, not necessarily.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, okay? You say it, and I know you believe it.
Yes, sir.
And I don't disbelieve you, but to me, once again, I know how this sounds, and I apologize for it, but to me, the plan is not acceptable for long-term future planning. It's just not what I want to see our community become.
I'd like to add that I also have concerns with the rate at which a lot of neighborhoods are becoming rental property. I'm observing some very large investment groups, national investment groups, coming in and buying up a large portion of neighborhoods and having very minimal interest in the upkeep of those properties because they're turning them into rental properties, who of course are short-termers, and they're just not going to fix the house up. So we're seeing that affect the other homeowners in the neighborhood and the way the neighborhood looks and the number of cars on the streets, because they also don't follow the HOA rules, and HOA rules in a lot of cases they're not even aware of the HOA rules. I see this as a big problem coming down the pike. And I also know there are some legal ways that this can be minimalized. Now, I'm a free market capitalist all the way, and I believe people should have the right to own property, and we do need to provide rental properties out there. But, there are ways we're requiring a minimum 2 years or so to live in the property, and if you want to continue to own it, then you can rent it out. But that kind of slows down the rate of these nationals coming in and letting the neighborhoods go way down. Not just this neighborhood, but in my mind, all of the things that we're going to see, there's going to be something that are going to concern me greatly. So I agree with Jeff on that. We've got to be really, really careful about the potential of these neighborhoods going downhill.
And I don't know all the legal ways to remedy an investor coming in years from now and buying up these properties. I mean, I've seen the same thing happen in my neighborhood, and it was built in 1999, I think, is when my first house was built. And there's still a fair amount of ownership in that neighborhood. And so I don't know how you overcome that whenever, Joe can sell it to whoever he wants to later on. I can tell you that my client in this situation sells to owners. He does not, they don't tend to sell to investors that I have seen. They've developed out West Lawn, and I think if you go through West Lawn, you'll see that it's owner occupied. Now what that next owner does, they can't control that. I don't know how best to overcome that, to be honest with you, Jim.
And that's what the issue is. The second owners end up selling them because these people come in, offer cash money, no realtors, they don't even look at the property. And there are a couple of companies in town that own several thousand homes. And you can see the homes just dropping in the neighborhoods.
Mhm.
They'll come in and just, and then the landscaping gets shoddy or not at all, and the shutters come off the house, and anything that's a maintenance issue just is gone.
I can, I'll certainly ask my client, if there's any kind of language. I know that they've got language already built into their deeds about short-term rentals, because I think they've already addressed that in some of their existing neighborhoods. Obviously, with 400 and something units, then they don't want to be selling to those people, to a rental market on the front side, because they've got a long-term investment here to make sure that it's still a quality project.
And to that point, I think that the developer who is refusing to sell to an investor owes it to the people that he are selling it to that same thing. Why should he say, I won't sell to an investor, but you can do it, and you can ruin your neighbor's property, but you can't ruin my property value?
Well, I think that there's got to. So I understand we've addressed this in some condo situation where, through limiting the number or amount of rentals in a particular condo development, I don't think that we've done it in a single-family development. But we've also left the flexibility that some people can rent, because if Matt goes in the nursing home whenever he's 40, he may need to rent out that house to pay for that. He can't afford to carry that for a while, and doesn't want to get stuck having to do a fire sale, or maybe he thinks he's going to come out of the nursing home and wants a place to go back to. So, there's some instances where rental for that future homeowner is very, I would say, desirable or needed flexibility. So I just don't know. If you set that number, I'd hate to be the 51st or
There's
so.
around that too,
Yeah.
doing appeals to the board of directors of the HOA. It can be done
All right.
legally. I've seen it done, and I think that should be an important
Do you have-
part of our documents. I know we don't do documents, but as part of a PUD, I think those can be included
What,
in the requirements.
Can you give me an example, and I'll be happy to look. I just don't have an example myself, Jim. If you give me an example, I'll be happy to look it up and give it to my client.
Shoot me an email.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
find one that
Okay.
has been written.
All right, we'll do that. Absolutely.
I think lot size drives a lot of that too, because what's the max square footage with setbacks on a 45-foot lot versus a 70-foot wide lot? You're still talking, 2,000 square foot largest, maybe?
So for a 45 square foot house, or a 45-foot lot, you're still going to be, you could easily get over 2,000 square feet. If you go to the envelope, just the envelope size, and then go 2 stories, you could easily get over 2,000 square feet. But then, if you find that person that wants just a one level living, then it will be a smaller square footage. But we see that, I see that throughout, especially as we've went to the more narrow homes. If you go to Hillwood over off Highway 96, it's all 50 or 51 foot wide lots, and I'd say most of those homes are selling for 300 plus at this point, if I'm not mistaken. And so it's not necessarily, it's not always lot size, but obviously, if you've got a 5-acre house, you can go put a trailer on, or a 5-acre lot, you can go put a trailer on if you want to. Nothing wrong with a trailer. I never lived in one, but I've got friends. So, but you can obviously do what you want to on no matter what size lot you have.
Jeff, seems like years ago, eons ago, matter of fact, when we were on here and we were on septic system, there was a lot more mixed homes.
Lot sizes.
Yeah, and mixed, small, medium, price-wise. I hadn't been down Elam's Mill Road in a long time. I know it's been a long time. It was the only unpaved road in our county at one time. Is it paved down to Elam's Mill now?
No, sir. It's still gravel. I think there's even been a little conversation about trying to close that, but I don't know if any formal action's been taken on that. So.
Well, won't some of them peel out and go? That'd be a direct route over to 41.
So I'm sure that what we actually found in the traffic study when we did the counts was that that more people use County Farm Road than what we really thought would use County Farm Road. And so when we met with Mike and our traffic consultant, Mike had expressed some hesitancy on the traffic distribution that we had proposed. And really what we'd proposed was just a reflection of what they were seeing in the field currently on people that were coming down Rucker Road and then turning primarily right, if I remember right, on the county farm to get back north. And so, but that number was far, far less on Elam Mill, and I think our distribution assumes zero going toward Elam Mill, just because there's a possibility it may not always be there. So,
But you got people like me that I'll take the alley to get out when everybody's going the
Yes,
road
sir.
you're suggesting. I'll take the least right road.
yeah, I would probably go the same way, Mr. Lynch. One thing that we forgot to mention was part of that traffic study. We went back and we evaluated the intersection of 231 and Rucker Road. Our traffic consultant had expressed a requirement or a need for to make that a 3-lane section, I think it was, a left turn lane toward the south coming out of Rucker Road. Well, that's already been committed to by Rucker Landing, I think was the name of the subdivision. And so Mike expressed that because of that, and our traffic consultant agreed that it'd be nice to have a northbound right turn lane onto Rucker to get those turners outside of that high-speed movement. And so we've agreed to just go ahead and add that right-hand turn lane out on 231 as well, in lieu of the left turn lane that somebody else is going to take care of.
And the traffic signal eventually coming.
Yes.
When's that again, Mike? I didn't hear that.
The next section. The next section.
Next section of what?
Of Davenport Station. We've,
Okay.
so it's coming. It's coming.
And I think Davenport is a good example. I don't necessarily know what size houses or what the minimums were at Davenport Station, but I think it's a masonry front and vinyl around the 3 sides, and I think most of those price points are in the 300s if I remember right, and it's right there at the intersection. So that's a good example of where the price points can be, and a lot of those are smaller lots as well. I think they're in the 50 to 60 square foot range. They're probably a little bigger than these just because you had the step system tank requirements and those clearances. But here we got the advantage of the sewer.
Doug, do you know how many available lots there are today that are available in the county?
Based on the last, of course, we keep up with an available lot inventory. It's not, I'll say it's not perfect. We had to start at just a specific point in time and go forward with it. But from 2004 to the present, we've kept it up to date. The last update I was able to do, it was somewhere between 900 and 950 available lots. Those are lots on the ground that could get a building permit today. That doesn't count the 3,500 plus that are in the system somewhere. They're preliminarily approved or they've got a final plat approval but haven't been recorded yet. So as far as available lots on the ground, just in the county, you're looking around 900-ish.
Sorry, the gremlins are playing with my software.
Doug, what we're getting into here, and I know we're starting to walk off in some tall grass here all of a sudden, but I just remember back, you talk about starter homes. I remember my first house, and it was what you called, an FHA home. Some of you may remember those, where you had to have copper pipe in them and all this sort of thing. It was 3-bedroom. 2 of the bedrooms, though, if you put a full-size bed in, you got a full-size bed and a dresser, and that was it. In fact, if you got a full-size bed in it, you probably when you walked in the door, you stepped in the bed. But now it was a small house. We bought it, and cost me $17,000. It and 2 acres, brick house. And I guess you would call that a starter house. But we kept it 4 years. We knocked out a wall, put on a deck, put central heat in there, because it didn't have any of that to begin with, and we sold it for $47,000. because that's when times started changing. But that's all the way back in 1970s. Those houses at that time were all built in subdivisions, and they were all built on those same plans. And they were small houses. And I can remember I had individuals and that was up in Putnam County, and I had people come from Rutherford County that come up there and visited me, and they said, well, these are nice. And they said, but you know, these are small houses, aren't they? And I said, yeah, that's what they're building up here. I think when we look at lots like this and we're seeing these, you know, how do they compare to some of the others? And I understand what everybody's saying. You want to mix and how to mix those and where do we go from there. What I look at sometimes is where are people going to build now? And I know Commissioner Cush is looking at this thing on infrastructure. Where my district is, it joins 3 other counties. Joins Bedford County, Marshall County, and Williamson County. The other day, I was driving I have to go into Bedford County and Marshall County a lot of times to get to parts of my county. The other day, I drove out of Rutherford County into Bedford County, and they're building houses galore right on the edge of Rutherford County. I mean, all kinds of houses. And they're not the $300,000 houses. A lot of them are not. We're having problems at Rockville School with traffic is what people are talking about out there, but the traffic is not based totally on the school. We got about an extra 6,000 cars coming through there in the morning that are coming from Bedford County, Marshall County, and Williamson County, heading into Rutherford County because this is where their jobs are. So anything we do is not based totally on what we do in Rutherford County anymore. It's what people are doing elsewhere. So whatever we build here may influx what builds around us. So I guess what I'm getting at right here, if we don't have some developments like these, we may have developments like those right next door to us. So I think we have to think about that too. So.
Pettis, I appreciate that. We all had starter homes. You just mentioned your starter home was $17,000 in brick and on 2 acres. We're concerned about these starter homes on a 40-foot wide lot.
Well, that's back when you had acreage.
Yeah, I know, but we
that
don't.
That acreage is gone.
I know, it is gone. So I'm not sure the relevancy of this conversation with this subdivision. I like the mixed use. I support what Chairman Phillips says. The mixed use long term is a better answer. So I guess, Matt, if you're looking for suggestions, I think the suggestion that Jeff is pointing you and I'm supporting is perhaps those wider 70-foot lots on your main drag are a larger square footage, higher price point, and then as you drift away north and south of the main darker orange 70-foot lots, then you start to step back in scale, square footage, and exterior materials to get into your more affordable price point that you're looking at. That's just a suggestion.
The applicant very cool and calm under some adverse conditions, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you trying to calm our fears a little bit. But once again, I have a concern, and that concern doesn't necessarily mean that I'm right and you're wrong. It doesn't mean that at all. But what it means is that, and I don't know how to say it other than, I think we ought to be looking what's in the best interest of this community long-term. This may be in the best interest of this community right now as the community continues to grow, but I am not convinced, and I'll have a hard time getting over that it is in the long-term best interest of all of us as citizens of Rutherford County for this magnitude of a development to be exclusive from just the size of lots and the number of homes that are going in there. I have just me have an issue with that. So
I appreciate all the dialogue we've had today. I've got one last question. You can answer it where do you think the cutoff, whether it be price or home size, is where we stop talking about starter and we talk about whether it's a second home or however you want to term that, Commissioner Phillips? I don't know that I have a good answer for that. I'm not. If you do, I would love to take that information back to my client and bounce that off of them.
I do not, and maybe staff can give us some of their wisdom and guidance there. But and I'm not necessarily saying you should just have two, really small homes and then a little bit larger homes. I'm thinking you could have 3 or 4. You could have some starter homes, some $300,000 homes, some $400,000 homes, all of those type of things within that one community. A family could grow, okay, and it would make it the ownership to me more valuable. So I don't have an answer. I'm sorry. Maybe over the next few months we can have some discussion on that, and we're looking for opportunities to train, and that could be one of the things that we discuss and beat around a little bit. But I don't have a good answer for it.
Thank you.
What I would say, I'd echo your comments, Jeff, that I couldn't sit here and say if it's X amount of money versus this is starter, this is step up from that. I don't have that. I think from a staff standpoint, I think what we'd be more comfortable seeing is kind of on the lines of what Mike was talking about, where you've got the larger lots that have a larger minimum square footage, because I'd be hesitant to start putting price points in there because that's so market driven.
Exactly.
That, if we hit a recession, hopefully we don't, but if we were to hit a recession in 5 years and the prices go down and all of a sudden you're locked into I have to put a certain price point on it, it's not going to sell. I'd rather look at it more in a sense of this is the square footage we're looking at.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't want to put a price point in the book. I was just I'm an engineer, I do math, so I was going to use that to do some reverse calculations on what the size of that home needs to be.
I just, through my mind in the conversation, was thinking 50% starter, 25% middle, 25% upper, because in 50%, not jobs and things are going to draw people away. So
Right.
I'm just trying to figure out what's a reasonable number. I'm not saying you have to use that.
Right.
I'm just trying to think like you are. It's what would be a reasonable mix that's justifiable, and people that choose to stay in that neighborhood would be a lot less percentage over time, maybe because of jobs and other things, that maybe percentages like that. And that may not be even anywhere close, but just trying to think through it.
All right.
Well, and then too, a lot of the bigger neighborhoods, the big national builders, they do quote a starter home, medium home, luxury home, a retirement home in the same village. They want to grab you when you're 20 years old, and then they want to bury you in the same compound. Yeah, in the green space. That's right. So, who's not to say that if I buy a 40-foot lot when I'm a young guy and starting a family, and I love the neighborhood, and when I outgrow my 40-foot lot, that I just may not want to move 2 streets over because I love the neighborhood.
I know some people personally that's happening in Franklin and some of those areas. They have a small house and starter home in that neighborhood, And they've just moved 2 streets over
Mhm.
and doubled the size of their house.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's something to that.
Yeah, we've had developments where, I mean, there's a big difference. I mean, they'll go from a townhouse to a single family in the same neighborhood, but we aren't doing the towns here. So, but we'll I'll take that back and see if we can add some add something else. So.
Thank you so much.
The parameters of what actually constitutes a starter home. That's what we're talking about today. So
Let go. The
Okay.
light's on.
does that mean I was turning it off every time? It says push. Well, it does. So I'm trying to follow direction. So
I'm glad I don't have that problem up here.
What constitutes a starter home? Is that the same 1,500 square foot that we probably all remember if we're lucky? I mean, I started out 600 square foot, so that was shack.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah, my first house, it was a little different than Mr. Reed's 17,000, but it was more like 150, and now you can't touch that now. So it's a different climate for sure.
Yeah, yes.
And that may be the 300,000 as a starter. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know. I have a good
I
feel
don't
for
either.
it.
I don't
Yep.
either.
Thanks for mic training.
Doug, do we need to do anything else with this?
No, sir. This was really more, I mean, this is what he wanted. So, and I think it was a good discussion.
More of a workshop.
Yeah.
Let me just throw something out there. The last, 10 years, just almost everything we do has an HOA involved in it. And we have no control, none whatsoever, over HOAs. Is that correct?
Essentially, yes, sir.
Is there any legal ramifications that the county can do? Let's just say that if this development were to be approved and the HOA says you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, but the HOA really don't care. They don't care, and they're not enforcing any of those rules. Can something be put together where the county can say this was approved with all of these restrictions that the HOA's not enforcing? Can we as a county take legal action against the HOA? Is there something, somehow, some way we can put something together that would give the county some teeth in addressing the HOA, not the homeowners necessarily, but the HOA, to say it was approved and you guys are supposed to police this, we're not, so we're suing you to make sure that you enforce your policies and regulations.
Well,
80%
let me answer it this way. Is it possible to come up with some language for that? I would say, I think there are ways to do that now. I would have to get with Nick, of course, to kind of walk through the legalities of all that. With a plan development especially, you can tailor the pattern book to say, all kinds of different things. Now, my concern is this. My concern would be if we put all these things into the pattern book, not just leave it up to the HOA. We put all these things in the pattern book and say, okay, no parking on the streets, no, named whatever it is, rentals, all the different things we talked about today. My question would be, how are we as the county supposed to enforce that?
Yeah.
A lot of these things, and Tanya Bell, our building codes director, the zoning enforcement officers work out of her office, and they do a great job. But to start enforcing some of the things that we're talking about today, I don't think we could do it with the staff we currently have. We would have to add staff, and a lot of these issues are hard to enforce, especially when it comes to the rental of property and things. We'd almost be having to check deeds every day. And how practical is that? So that's why I think from that standpoint, we like relying on an HOA, but that gets back to what you were saying. Not all HOAs are created equal in that sense. Some are very active, and some do a good job in taking care of their neighborhoods. Others, not
Is
so
there a lot
much.
of them in chaos now that you know of?
Not that I
HOA?
know of, but truthfully, I don't really follow that just a whole lot. I know as we put more and more on them when it comes to like these kiosks, mail kiosks we're putting in, and just the drainage improvements and things like that. I think over time, we'll kind of see how that plays out, but I haven't been made aware. Mike, have you been made aware of anything from a drainage standpoint?
Oh, Public Works is having to take care of pond after pond, I mean, more and more often.
I'm not suggesting that we have to that we have to be police officers by any stretch of the imagination, but since we've been doing a lot of on-site water containment and on-site sewage, since we've been doing a lot of those, everything is an HOA. So what happens somewhere down the road? They've all worked pretty well, I think. But what happens down the road when you get a homeowner that has a containment pond on his land, and it was approved that way, but he starts going in there and filling it in, and you're saying we don't have any control over it, and I don't disagree with that, but it goes beyond just parking. You know, what happens at some point in time where the HOA is ineffective and just says we don't care? And a lot of the subdivisions that we're building are really nice, and the HOA will be real effective. But there are some that I have mega concerns that HOA, it's just there. They won't do anything. They won't enforce policies and procedures, even though they're there. That was my question. Could we put something together to say, you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing, and it's not in the best interest of the county for that to happen, so you're going to have to pay the price? Is it possible that we could even look at something like that, Nick? Is it possible?
I'm happy to get with Doug on it. I'm not aware of a state law or statute that would be binding there, so you're talking about something in writing. And the question is, when you have something in writing, for it to be binding, you need two parties on either side. So the other party would, I assume, be the HOA. Here, practical, I guess, issues that HOA isn't formed yet, right? So it's not going to be formed until the subdivision's essentially developed.
Right.
So who's going to be signing this agreement to later enforce? I'm happy to talk with Doug.
Yeah, but I think what I'm hearing you saying, Jeff, it sounds more like you want to see some sort of HOA oversight or something like that. It's something on those lines, I guess.
Doug, but I've just, we're still kind of new into this, even though we've been doing it a lot the last 10, 15 years, 20 years maybe, but we've been doing it a lot, and we haven't had any issues or problems. But do we need something out there that would give us some oversight as problems begin to develop, as these developments really begin to mature and are no longer new but old developments, especially with, when you talk about water quality and all of those kinds of things. So it's just a thought. And if nobody else even wants to go there, we won't. But
well, I think it makes me feel good when we approve something and we say the HOA is going to take care of it. So it's off of us. We're washing our hands of it. But then, like you say, if the HOA is just a name, so we put it off on something that's not even there. It doesn't even exist.
And Craig, I know Doug feels bad. Mike feels bad when citizens call and say, this is what's going on, and we say, well, we don't have any control over that. You need to go to the HOA, and the HOA doesn't care. There's a bunch of them out there that do. I own a home in East Tennessee in the mountains, and I had an attorney look at the HOA restrictions. It was 84 pages. 84 pages, and it was scary. But that HOA, if you even park your car out on the street for 5 minutes, will have somebody knocking on your door telling you to move it. So they're involved. I can't see a development like this being that involved. Of course, there are 30 homes versus.
Yeah, and there's, another thing to think about too is there's a lot of third-party HOA management companies out there that that's their specialty. They help take care of these neighborhoods. That's a facet of this as well. So Yeah, I mean, I'd be more than happy to get with Nick and kind of flesh this out some for you.
And you know, don't put it on the front burner, okay? But I think it's just something that, as we continue to mature and look forward, that it's something that deserves some discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Perhaps an interesting training session for us, and I think I recommended this in the past, but if there are a handful of large third-party HOA companies that represent multiple subdivisions in this county, if we could arrange for 2 or 3 representatives of those big companies to sit with us one morning for an hour and a half, and we just chit-chat back and forth about their concerns, our concerns, what we think they're doing and what they think we're doing, maybe that would shed some light on what our next step might need.
And actually, I can think of a couple people I could ask.
Yeah.
Once you say that, so.
Because
yeah,
you're
let's-
right,
we'll work in
we
that
assume that
direction,
they're doing a lot, and they may not know we're putting that burden on them. I don't know, but I think that would be a valuable discussion to have.
I think you're probably right.
We'll work in that direction.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions on that, one other item I did want to bring up for some discussion today. Earlier this year, we had some discussion regarding quarries and mining facilities and the setbacks that accompany them. You'll recall we did a study on that, kind of looked at a lot of surrounding communities, not just here, but in other states. And there was also, we did a training, I believe back in June, if I remember right. You had someone from that side of the industry, if you will, talk about blasting concerns and those kind of things. I think it's still something that we still need to flesh out and maybe move forward with at this point. Of course, the big one I think that we were all talking about really had to do with the setbacks, especially from residential properties. Currently our setbacks, we have 1 mile from any community education activity, which is like a school. 1,500 to the property line of any existing community assembly activity, which would be like a church, healthcare activity, or existing residentially zoned properties. 1,000 feet from any property zoned in the office and institutional districts, and then 300 feet from any property zoned in industrial districts, public roads, and rights of way. Now that's just for the actual quarried area itself, that we're, I guess if you would say where the hole would be. Those are setbacks from that. There's another setback that we have on here that just deals with storage of spoil material, equipment, things like that. That would require 200 feet from any property line, regardless of the zoning. You can have parking, fencing, offices, weight scales, things like that. That would just be subject to the normal requirements of the zoning district. When we had presented the report, we looked at several aspects, and the ones that staff really was the most interested in having a discussion on and possibly changing had to do with the setbacks. Staff would not propose any changes to how these are approved. Right now, rock quarries and those kind of things are allowed in only 2 districts. That's heavy industrial or agricultural residential districts, and only then by special exception. So we wouldn't propose any changes to either of those. I think that's appropriate. Quite frankly, I would prefer to see them in the agricultural districts just for the range of uses that you could see in a heavy industrial zone. So what I would like to see is maybe some discussion and maybe you authorizing staff to move forward with some amendments to put them out there at least for some comment as far as looking at those setbacks, especially from the residential properties. What I'm thinking, at least from our standpoint in conversations that I've had, there was some discussion about, well, should we look at 500 feet, 750, something like that. I think from staff standpoint, we would be comfortable looking at 750 feet from any property line to residential. I think you could take the office and institutional districts down to 500. And if you wanted to, you could just leave the industrial districts and public roads rights of way at 300. I don't really necessarily think you have to change any of that. But I think the big one, and we've discussed the reasons why, as far as, we don't want to be in a situation where we've effectively zoned these things out of the county, because that becomes a possibility of a legal issue. I'm not saying we've done that, but I'm just saying any steps that we could take to make sure we haven't. I think it's incumbent and prudent of us to at least look at that. So that's kind of what I would propose. I just kind of wanted to, after the training and the discussions that we've had, just kind of wanted to gauge the temperature of the commission and, again, just talk about maybe moving some amendments forward for discussion. So I'll be happy to answer questions or any discussions you all may have.
So would you just briefly again tell me those, what it is with the setbacks, what they are now, and then what you're
Yes, sir.
proposing side by side for
Yes.
each individual?
Yes, sir, I can do
zone?
that. For the setback for existing schools, we just leave that at 1 mile. Okay, I wouldn't propose any changes there. For the 1,500-foot setback from any property line of an existing community assembly activity, again, it's like a church or a lodge, club, something like that. Healthcare activities or residentially zoned properties, that's currently 1,500. And staff would propose, and this was in our study, looking at, possible changes to that, taking that down to maybe like 750 or even 500, but I think 750, just cutting that one in half. 1,000 feet currently from any property zoned in office and institutional districts, commercial districts, or special character districts. I would propose moving that down. Since we cut the other one in half, we could cut this one in half to 500 feet. Quite frankly, there's not a whole lot, as you know, there's not just a whole lot of commercially zoned property in the county. Most of what we're going to bump into is going to be the residentially zoned. I mean, that one's going to win out more often than not. And then the 300 feet from any property zoned in industrial districts, any public roads or rights of way, you could leave that at 300 feet. You could take that down to 150 if you wanted to, but I don't see any, that one really, again, for as little commercial and office and institutional zoning districts as you see, you don't see much in the way of any industrial zoning either. I mean, it's out there. You look at the map before you on your screen right now, you can see those darker purple and lighter purple areas. Those are industrial districts. But as you can see, it's certainly not the predominant zoning. What you see is a lot of orange, a lot of yellow, and then some green. Those are the residential districts that you're looking at.
But you've included roads in that category?
Yes, roads as well.
Any road?
Public road.
Doug, if you brought a suggestion forward for discussion, could you also bring forward recommendations from the state as it relates to those safety issues that go along with that, and maybe what some of our neighboring counties have, even like Davidson County, something like
Well,
that?
I know that some of them don't really get that in depth. I mean, a lot of them that we looked at really just have numbers as far as how far away. It doesn't really get into a lot of the issues like with the training that they talked about. Now, I will say, looking at the regulations that we currently have on quarrying and different things, some of the required information that we require, we do require a detailed site plan, of course, with base data and then the proposed use. But some of the things, a plan of operations that we would require, some of which include, safety measures, machinery to be used, noise levels, location and typical schedule of blasting, different things like that. So, this is information that we would require on the front end before they would apply anyway. So, I'm just saying, I'd be happy to do that, yes, but I did want you to know that, some of this is already in our ordinances currently. Again, this isn't something we get a lot of applications for, and I don't, even if we were to reduce these setbacks, I don't see us getting just a whole lot of applications in. This is just not, it's just not something you see a lot of. So I'm not saying we'll never see one, but at the same time, I don't think we're opening the floodgates for a bunch of quarrying operations if we were to change some of these setbacks.
If you cut some of those 500s down to 300s, you are increasing the life of that quarry.
Well, you may be. Yeah, there is
So
some of that.
therefore,
There
you
is some
won't have
chance.
to have another quarry started. We got to have rock. We understand that.
Right.
We're not trying to close quarries because I like rocks. I like to walk on rocks versus mud. And if you do have quarries, 300 to 500 feet, I'm close to a quarry out there, and that 200 feet, it won't shake my dishes any less, or it won't the dust off of it. 200 feet just means more to a quarry than it does to. I'm thinking it's not that big a deal.
It's not going to be popular, though, with the general public.
Well, and what we're looking at right now, of course, what we're proposing is just looking at the regs themselves, okay? We're not looking at a specific application here. Again, that part of it, I want to stress that again, we're not proposing where they're permitted or how they're approved in the first place. That wouldn't change.
Okay, see.
Only 2 districts that you would look at, and then even then, they have to be by special exception. So first, they'd have to go through the zoning process. Even if that's approved, then they have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So there's layers at that point. And even if they get approval with all those layers, there's still the site plan approval and the information that's required on that. So, I mean, there's multiple, bites at the apple, so to speak. But I agree. This is kind of going back to what Craig was saying. This is not a use that people like to talk about.
Right.
Is it something that you have to have? Like we said, you got to have rock for development. Does anybody want it near them? Probably not. But it's a discussion that needs to be had, I think.
So if you change the, I'm sorry, I was doing a Lee. If you change the regs, then an existing quarry could come back and petition to.
Under the new regulations, yes, they could. You're right.
It's not one of those things that I even want to talk about or think about, but it's probably something as we continue to grow that we really need to talk about and think about. And let's just open up the discussion and see where it goes. If it's okay with everyone, unless you just absolutely positively object to it, staff thinks it's important enough that we have a discussion on it, so I think we have a discussion on it and just see where it goes, okay? So bring it forward. It'll be probably best to have it at one of our day meetings to have the discussion, and then if we decide to go beyond that, then it'll have to go before us a night session. But just the initial discussion, we could do that at a day meeting, correct?
I mean, I think we could.
Yeah.
I would like to, try to keep this moving forward.
Yeah.
I know we've talked a lot about this, and, I haven't pushed it as much as probably I should have, but at the same time, I want to make sure that your questions are answered before. I just don't want to put something up there that's, why are we doing this kind of a thing, and what is our justification for it? I want to make sure that everybody's on board, at least with the reasoning of why we did it.
Would you rather open up the discussion at a night meeting? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I think we could do it either way. The changes that I'm proposing, just looking at this and what I've just suggested here, would not be difficult to put on an agenda, on a nighttime agenda to bring it forward. So, I'll take my direction from what the commission wants.
Okay. What's your preference?
Day meeting.
Day meeting, and I'd like to hear it, and then if we decide to go forward with it, then we'll carry it right onto the 6 p.m. meeting for public input and see where we go from there.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I think that'll work. If that's what you want to do.
Question. Doug, as this body hears different planning proposals, we have to deal with nice and fun topics and difficult topics. This would be a difficult topic.
Yep.
But it has to be done. So let me ask you, could you perhaps inquire, right now Public Works is dealing with a lot of discussion about the life expectancy of the current landfill. I'm assuming the local quarry or quarries also have some anticipated, with the current regulations, some life expectancy of their quarry operation based on the boundaries that our regulations have set forth. Is it fair to ask them what their life expectancy is of?
We can try to approach that.
Okay.
We'll see what we can come up with.
Yeah, I mean, without changing these boundaries, do they have 2 more years of rock left, 10 more years of rock left? That may facilitate how quickly some of us feel about getting these things changed in a timely fashion.
Okay.
Or some other applicant might come with a new site somewhere within the county or neighboring county on the border that touches or is involved in Rutherford County. I'm just asking.
Mike, I think I've asked you this before. Is there a depth that which it's not economical for a quarry to go, or does water create too much of a problem, or?
Typically, that's what you run into is the water level, and there, there's safety wall step backs that you have to adhere to.
Yeah.
You can only go so deep before you have to have a step. I don't know off the top of my head if they've been reached, or you could dig all the way to China. There's two schools of thoughts on that.
I guess the proper word, Doug, is reserve. What's the reserve of rock these folks have?
Anything else, Doug?
I don't have anything personally, but I think Mike may
I
have
do.
some discussions.
Like to say, thank goodness, I've finally got some help. I've got two new engineers. I got Sheila Huffmeyer, PE, is our assistant county engineer.
Hi, Sheila.
Hey, Sheila.
She, like I said, is a PE. Comes to us from MTSU, their stormwater program over there, and also the city of Crossville. She works in their engineering department there. And then also with Public Works, we've got Ben Friend here. Technically works for Greg, but he shares him with me, so helped me out a lot. He's comes from TDOT, their Tullahoma office, and he's working on his PE. Going to get it this fall, maybe. Yeah. All right.
Keep fingers
So I'm just tickled that I've got some help, but help me welcome them to our staff and Rutherford County. Sheila's been here for a long time, and Ben is still a Manchester resident, I believe, aren't you? I don't know if I can get him to move here, but that's all I have.
Thank you.
Very good. Welcome.
Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 9th. It'll be on the second floor of the historic courthouse. Anything else? Thank you. We're adjourned.